Good morning. I am Gracie Roberts, and you are welcome to the so-called Heritage House here in Roberts Switch, Tennessee. This house is the original home of Harmon Young Lee, and it has been moved from down the Roberts Road up to this present location about 15 years ago. My husband and I came about it. A guy gave it to us, but we had to move it, so we moved it up here and spent 10 years remodeling it, trying to keep it to its original state as much as we can. So this building is 140 years old, and Harmon Young Lee raised his family, 20 plus kids in this house. It did not look like this, but upstairs when we go there, you'll get a little more idea of what it actually looked at that time. So as you would have came into the door, this room was one of two so-called living rooms or bedrooms, and the house was just this part here, and they would have had a stove here and lived in this part of the house and the upstairs. Later on, an addition was built on the back, and they put a kitchen back there. There were 3 rooms back there, a kitchen and 2 other bedrooms, because you needed room for 20-some kids, whatever. So this would have been where they would have came in and spent most of their time. There was no air conditioning, and when they built it, there was no electricity. Electricity was later added in the 1940s sometime. And so the lights that we have now then would have been a coal oil lamp, and during those days they would have been outside or just had natural light from whatever shined in through the windows. That would have been what would have lit the rooms up and stuff. Back in those days, they spent most of the time outside because they were subsistent farmers. They grew their crops, they raised their crops and raised their families in here. And so you didn't have TV, you didn't have radio. Some people had musical instruments. The Roberts family did not. We're not musically inclined, the ones that are from my husband's line of people. But anyway, so this was one of the rooms, and in here was the other room. We now have this as our kitchen little area. These walls are the original walls that when this was built, this was original. Some of them were rotten, and we had to replace them, and plus we wanted to lighten the place up, so we put a more modern day drywall and painted it to lighten the room up and stuff. And we have decorated the house on heritage items, items that have meaning to us. We're not into collecting antiques or anything, although some people give us some just to display it and stuff. But there's pictures throughout the whole house, thus the name Heritage House, of the Robertses. This particular display here, this one is what we call Mammy. She's Pearl Roberts. She married Daley Roberts, and she had a slew of kids that populated this area around here. One of her children was Clavis Roberts, her oldest son, who is the father of my husband, Tommy Roberts. And this is my husband's Tommy's family, his mother and the family here. And like I said, the whole house is decorated with each item in it. There is a story behind it. And I won't go into all of those, but that's kind of what we have here for people to come. When we first got it, I can show you a little later a picture of what the house looked like at the time. It did not look like what it looks like now. This room back here, when you come in, these walls were the original logs also, and that's chestnut lumber. Not all of them. Some of them are and some of them are not. This big one right here is a chestnut. This one right here is a chestnut. The chestnut trees, there was a blight came through and it killed the vast majority of all the chestnut trees. Back in those days, 140 years ago, houses were made predominantly from chestnut lumber, which was a very hard lumber. And this would have been, you can see how big the tree was been. And when we got the house, this is what, before we moved it up the road, this is what the house looked like at that time. Like I say, that's about 15 years ago. This was what it looked like the day that we moved it from its location at the time and brought it, had a crew come in and they moved it literally up here. And 10 years later than we have what we have now. But these logs, the logs on there were original ones. And this room is our meeting room. We have a large conference table that we have events here like family reunions, family gets together, Christmas events, Christmas dinners, birthday parties, anything like that. Anybody that's our family, they're welcome to use it. We charge nothing. We also have our own rules, because since we do not charge any money and don't want any money from it, Uncle Sam can't say, you will do this, this, and this. And we say, no, it's ours, it's our home. We'll have who we want to in our home. We're very welcoming to most people as they come anyway. You might notice these feed sacks, the story behind them. In this room, the floor was, we were trying to save it, but it was so mushy and soft that we wound up having to remove all the floor and put down more lumber. And when we took up the lumber that was there as the floor, this is what the people used back in those days between the subfloor and the floor that you would walk on to keep it from squeaking. We now have tar paper like that you put down, or other more modern stuff things, but this is what they used back in those days. So I managed to salvage those. Those are 100-year-old feed sacks from the area. So as you come around, you can see, like I said, we have other pictures displayed, and the main one that we like, these are all the people that have lived in this house at some time back in the early days. This is the oldest picture that we have. We do not have a picture of Joseph Roberts, the forefather that settled this area, but this is his son, who my husband's line and most of the Robertses that come to the Roberts reunion descend from. And this is Francis Marion Roberts, and this is his original the original picture, the first picture that we ever found of him. We were home on leave one time because my husband was military, and while we were home, my father-in-law wanted to go visit the person that had this. And when we went, my husband begged Harold Roberts that we would borrow it, take it, and copy it, and then bring it right back to him. And so he allowed us to do that. And so with that, I got 4x5 negative, and from that negative, then any of the pictures that you see of this that are floating around probably came from that endeavor. I was in the Air Force at the time and was able to print pictures, so I printed them by hundreds, and it didn't cost anything because I could label it as training for me, and then we passed them out to everyone. So just about anybody that's in the Roberts family, when pictures was the way to go, got a picture of this. And now it's all on computer, on Instagram, digital cameras, and all. So